The whole practice boils down to letting go of the ego, because the ego is an obsessive fixation on I am this mind and body. Even when we become practitioners, we often don't realize this. It's difficult to understand. It is often said that one should develop compassion for others, think less about oneself, and more about helping others. This is considered the best way to get rid of one's self, the clinging to ego. There are two categories of practitioners. The first are those who do not think about themselves but think about how to help others, how to spread the Dharma. They have no internal problems in their practice. They completely dedicate themselves to helping others. Their own practice is just a means of service, whether they are chopping wood or preparing prasadam. The second category are those who do not care about others, but care a lot about themselves. That is why they have many problems. Sometimes something doesn't work out. Sometimes they are dissatisfied with their sadhana. Sometimes they have conflicts, with one person, then with another. They retreat into the cocoon of the individual I, concerned only with themselves, and with each problem they become even more isolated. This is a consequence of a fundamental misunderstanding of the principle of spiritual practice. We think that by caring for others, we gain nothing. We think, this was all invented by saints for convenience, so that it would be comfortable for everyone to live and practice in the monastery. But the saints do not speak superficial things. Their advice touches the very essence of spiritual life. They affirm, by helping others, we primarily help ourselves. When we begin to help others, our consciousness expands. We step beyond the cocoon of our own I and see how insignificant our personal problems are compared to the great energy or consciousness. This leads to self-liberation. Problems stop overwhelming us. There was a guru once. An ascetic came to him and said that his servant, having died, was reborn in hell. The ascetic saw this with spiritual vision and asked the teacher to save the servant through prayers. The teacher replied that this was not enough. The ascetic had a strong karmic bond with the servant and needed to pray himself. The guru said, "You must imagine how his sufferings in hell enter you and send him the light of your soul and merit." The ascetic began doing so, and soon signs of the servant's higher rebirth appeared. But the ascetic himself came back after a few days and complained, "My body burns and is covered with blisters." The teacher replied, "This is a sign of successful practice. You have taken his sufferings upon yourself and freed him from hell." When we are not attached to ourself, we have a better chance of achieving enlightenment. This does not mean oppression or narrow-mindedness. Self-surrender is not loss of power, but on the contrary, the gaining of energy and flexibility of mind. Letting go of the ego does not mean living in sadness and self-deprecation. It does not mean, like Goswami Vrindavan, calling Radha and Krishna and rolling in the dust. This may be appropriate for bhakti, but for a yogi it means developing qualities without attachment to the result. Letting go of the ego means getting rid of the sense of self-importance based on ideas of the mind. Yes, we cultivate divine pride, the sense of oneself as the absolute, but not selfish importance. Our consciousness becomes flexible and fluid. The more a yogi practices, the more they realize that everything is originally perfect. Problems arise only from inattentiveness. If a person is able to let go of themselves in any situation, everything becomes a blessing. Whether peaceful or angry, all is for the good. If they abandon hopes, plans, and fears, everything is favorable. We cling to the I, even though there is nothing real in it. For its sake, we harm others, accumulate bad karma, and suffer in lower realms. In the Bodhicharya avatar, it is said, "O my consciousness, for countless ages you sought benefit only for yourself, exhausting and drying yourself out, but in return you gained only sorrow." We have been trapped by the ego for millions of kalpas, all without result. We did not become gods in a Kanishta or Buddhas in rainbow bodies. Therefore, we need the opposite thinking, anti-ego thinking. Sometimes Even spiritual practice becomes a form of ego. There once lived a righteous man who prayed constantly. Next door lived a drunkard, but before his death, he quit drinking. After death, the righteous man went to hell, while the sinner went to heaven. The righteous man was outraged. God answered him through angels. At least he didn't bother anyone with his requests, including God. This is an example of how even prayer can become a form of selfish attachment. Pure self-surrender does not seek fruits. When it is achieved, a person enters a natural state, and then the fruits come on their own. The ego is not something real. The true enemy is the very notion of its reality. In the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, it is said, "Feel the consciousness of each as your own, and attain awakening." Compassion and helping others are the path to detachment from the ego. Then presence increases. Yes, we care for the body and prana, but all this is done for the sake of service and offering to the Absolute. From yogic ego, we make an offering to the divine. What is ego? It is called ahamkara, the inner instrument. It includes the manas, the mind, chitta, memory, and general consciousness, buddhi, intuition, as well as the body, karma, the sense organs, and actions. To free oneself from the ego means to develop compassion and to discard the sense of self-importance. At a deep level, this is viveka, discriminating wisdom. In the state of contemplation, we see that thoughts and emotions are just energy. The ego arises when we identify with them. Letting go of this, we become free. If anger seizes us, it's worth asking, is this part of the enemy's plan or my own reaction? Attachment to friends? Where does it come from? From within us or somewhere outside? Does anger or attachment have shape, color, characteristics? No matter how much we search, we find nothing. So why do we cling to it? It turns out that suffering is caused by what does not exist. We need to learn to immediately recognize attachment to the ego and strive not to repeat it. Shantideva spoke to his ego. "The time when you could suppress me has vanished without a trace. Now you cannot escape. I see you through and will tame your unheard of arrogance." A true practitioner constantly sees the ego through and does not allow it to escape the control of subtler consciousness.